A luxury sedan sits perfectly in its lane. No broken taillights, no erratic driving, no violation except existing while black in the wrong neighborhood. The patrol car's headlights cut through darkness. Two officers approach with the confidence of hunters who found easy prey. "Step out of the vehicle." She complies. 20 years of legal training taught her to stay calm, stay compliant, stay alive. Slow movements, hands visible, everything by the book. The younger officer yanks her purse away. Contents scatter across wet asphalt. Legal briefs mix with broken glass from her phone screen. "Turn around." Hands behind your back. The handcuffs click shut around wrists that sign federal indictments, around hands that hold the power to destroy careers, around the arms of someone these officers should fear, but they have no idea who they just handcuffed. The federal building downtown stands dark except for one window. The Attorney General's office burns bright with midnight urgency. Files spread across mahogany desks tell stories of corruption, cover-ups, and crimes that reach into every corner of the city's police force. Dr. Alicia Morrison built her career in these halls. Harvard Law led to federal prosecution. Federal prosecution led to cases that toppled corrupt officials across 3 states. Tonight, she was driving home from strategy meetings about her biggest case yet. The same case that targets the officers now pushing her into their patrol car. Her father's voice echoes from childhood lessons about justice. Attorney General Robert Morrison raised his daughter to believe the law protects everyone equally. He taught her that truth always surfaces. Power always faces accountability. The federal building holds her real identity. Miles away, Captain Janet Wilson reviews the night's arrests. Another successful bust in the wealthy district, another criminal off the streets. She signs the paperwork without reading names, without checking backgrounds, without realizing she just approved the arrest of the federal prosecutor who's been building a case against her department for 8 months. The investigation file sits 3 floors above Wilson's office. Wiretap transcripts, financial records, video evidence of systematic corruption. Everything needed to indict half the precinct leadership. Tomorrow's raid list contains familiar names. Alicia sits in the patrol car's cage. Her wrists burn from handcuffs designed for criminals, not federal prosecutors. The officers celebrate their catch on the radio. They joke about teaching lessons to people who don't belong in nice neighborhoods. They don't know she belongs in courtrooms. They don't know she belongs in federal buildings where their fates get decided. They don't know she belongs to the family that spent decades fighting police corruption. Her composed breathing fogs the window. 20 years of legal training prepared her for hostile cross-examinations, not hostile arrests. But the skills transfer. Stay calm. Document everything. Wait for the right moment. Justice builds cases brick by brick. Tonight, these officers just handed her the final brick. The precinct buzzes with late-night energy. Fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across worn linoleum floors. The booking area smells of disinfectant and desperation. Alicia moves through the process with practiced calm. Fingerprints, mugshots, property inventory, each step designed to strip dignity from those who enter. "Name," the desk sergeant demands. "Dr. Alicia Morrison." Occupation, attorney. Snickers ripple through the room. Officer Mitchell leans against the wall, arms crossed. "Another lawyer who thinks she's special." Sergeant Coleman joins the mockery. "They all claim to be doctors and lawyers. Next she'll say she knows the mayor." The irony cuts deep. She knows the mayor. She knows the governor. She knows federal judges who could shut down this precinct with one phone call. But revealing connections now would only escalate their aggression. "I need to make my phone call," Alicia states clearly. "You'll make your call when we say you make your call," Coleman responds. 20 years of badge authority backs his voice. 20 years of never facing consequences for overreach. Detective Amanda Davis watches from across the room. Something about this arrest bothers her. The suspect's composure, her precise language, the way she navigates legal procedures like someone who's spent years in courtrooms. Davis recognizes something the others miss. The booking process continues. Personal items cataloged, jewelry removed, each step designed to reduce human beings to inventory numbers. "Remove your jacket," Mitchell orders. Alicia complies. Beneath expensive fabric lies the truth these officers can't see. Federal prosecutor credentials in her wallet, business cards from the Attorney General's office, court documents bearing her signature on cases that destroyed corrupt cops in other cities. "Fancy clothes," Coleman observes. "Drug money buys nice things." The accusation hangs in stale air. No evidence, no probable cause, just assumptions built on prejudice and power. "I demand to speak with your supervisor," Alicia says. "You demand?" Mitchell steps closer. "You're not demanding anything. You're going where we put you. You're staying as long as we want. You're learning how things work in the real world. The real world. They have no idea she prosecutes real-world corruption for a living. Real-world cases that send real officers to real federal prisons." Davis approaches the desk. "What's the charge?" Coleman glances at his report. "Suspicious behavior in an upscale neighborhood. Failure to comply with lawful orders." "That's not a charge," Alicia interjects. "That's not even a misdemeanor." "Listen to the lawyer talk," Mitchell mocks. "Thinks she knows our job better than we do." She does know their job. She knows it well enough to prosecute them for not doing it. She knows it well enough to write federal legislation about police reform. She knows it well enough to train federal agents who investigate departments exactly like this one. But knowledge without power is just frustration. And right now, these officers hold all the apparent power. "I want my phone call," she repeats. "Phone's broken," Coleman lies easily. "Try again tomorrow." Davis shifts uncomfortably. 20-year veterans lying about broken phones. Fabricated charges that won't survive first court appearance. Red flags multiply with each passing minute. The holding cell door clangs open. Metal on metal creates echoes that bounce off concrete walls. The sound of justice perverted into punishment. "Your hotel room awaits," Mitchell gestures mockingly. Alicia steps inside. The cell measures 8 feet by 6 feet. A concrete bench, a steel toilet. Bars that separate the accused from accusers who often deserve switching places. "Comfortable?" Coleman asks through the bars. "I've seen worse," she responds truthfully. Federal prison cells during corruption prosecutions. Evidence rooms filled with drugs seized from dirty cops. Interview rooms where powerful men broke down and confessed to decades of crimes. One phone call could end their careers. The officers walk away, satisfied with their catch. Another night's work completed. Another lesson taught to someone who stepped outside social boundaries they enforce through fear. Davis lingers. Something about this arrest feels wrong. The suspect's calm confidence, her legal vocabulary, the way she referenced procedures most civilians never learn. "Ma'am," Davis approaches the cell quietly. "You said you're an attorney?" "Federal prosecutor," Alicia corrects. "Civil Rights Division." The words hit Davis like cold water. Federal prosecutor. Civil rights. The exact combination that destroys police careers when misconduct surfaces. "What kind of cases do you handle?" "Police corruption," Alicia responds simply. Davis's face goes pale. Federal prosecutor specializing in police corruption. Arrested without cause by officers who should know better. The nightmare scenario every honest cop fears witnessing. "I need to make some calls," Davis mutters. "Yes," Alicia agrees. "You do." The precinct continues its late-night rhythm. Reports typed, coffee consumed, jokes shared about teaching lessons to uppity suspects who forget their place in the social order. None of them realize the federal prosecutor sits in their holding cell. None of them know about the corruption investigation already targeting their department. None of them understand that their victim possesses power to destroy not just careers, but entire command structures. The federal prosecutor sits in their holding cell. Davis retreats to her desk. Computer screen glows in fluorescent darkness. Time to run background checks. Time to discover truths that might save careers or confirm disasters. Her fingers hesitate over the keyboard. Some searches reveal information that changes everything. Some discoveries carry consequences that ripple through entire organizations. But honest cops investigate truth, regardless of where it leads. The search begins. Captain Janet Wilson arrives with manufactured urgency. Her polished boots echo against linoleum as she surveys the night's accomplishments. 25 years of climbing departmental ladders taught her to spot problems before they explode. "What do we have?" she asks Coleman. "Drug suspect. Caught her in the Riverside district, acting suspicious." Wilson nods approvingly. The Riverside district needs protection from undesirable elements. Property values depend on maintaining certain standards. Her political connections depend on keeping wealthy donors satisfied. Evidence? Coleman produces a small plastic bag. White powder. Enough for possession charges. Enough to justify tonight's arrest. Enough to transform reasonable suspicion into probable cause. But the evidence tells a different story. Alicia watches through cell bars as Coleman displays drugs that weren't in her car. 20 years of prosecuting planted evidence cases taught her to recognize manufactured proof, the timing, the convenient discovery, the perfectly measured quantity. "Where did you find this?" Wilson examines the bag. Center console, hidden under legal papers. More lies stacking upon lies. The legal papers scattered across wet asphalt contained federal subpoenas, grand jury documents, evidence requests for ongoing corruption investigations. Wilson seals the bag with practiced efficiency. "Book her for possession with intent. Let's do this by the book." By the book. The irony burns deeper than handcuff marks. Federal guidelines require probable cause. Constitutional standards demand reasonable suspicion. Due process protects even those accused of crimes. None apply here. Davis returns from her computer search. Her expression carries weight of unwelcome discoveries. Background checks reveal information that transforms routine arrests into potential disasters. "Captain, we need to talk." Later, Davis. "Paperwork first." "This can't wait." Wilson studies her detective's face. Urgent whispers in police precincts usually signal problems that require immediate attention or immediate suppression. They step into Wilson's office. Glass walls provide privacy while maintaining surveillance over the booking area. Power structures built on visibility and control. Alicia observes their conference through cell bars. Body language speaks volumes about developing concerns. Davis gestures toward computer screens. Wilson's posture stiffens with each revelation. Federal crime just became their biggest mistake. Mitchell continues processing paperwork. Arrest reports require specific language to survive judicial review. Reasonable suspicion must appear reasonable. Probable cause must seem probable. Legal fiction demands careful construction. Suspect displayed furtive movements consistent with narcotics trafficking, he types. Vehicle search revealed controlled substances in plain view. None true. All necessary for successful prosecution. Truth becomes whatever serves department interests. The federal building's security cameras captured different truth. Traffic stop footage shows no furtive movements, no probable cause, no reasonable suspicion beyond driving while black in a white neighborhood. But security footage requires federal subpoenas to access, and federal prosecutors issue those subpoenas. Wilson's office door opens. Both officers emerge with expressions suggesting unwelcome complications. Davis walks directly toward the holding cells. Wilson follows with reluctant steps. Ma'am, Davis addresses Alicia formally. We need to verify some information. Of course you do. Wilson studies the suspect through bars. Expensive clothing suggests resources for quality legal representation. Composed demeanor indicates familiarity with legal procedures. Educational background obvious from vocabulary and bearing. You stated you're a federal prosecutor? Correct. What division? Civil Rights. Public Corruption Unit. The words land like physical blows. Civil Rights prosecutes police misconduct. Public corruption destroys law enforcement careers. Federal authority supersedes local control. Davis knows something doesn't add up. Wilson's mind races through potential consequences. Federal prosecutors possess resources for extensive litigation. Civil rights attorneys specialize in police misconduct cases. Public corruption units investigate departments exactly like theirs. What cases are you currently handling? Wilson asks carefully. I can't discuss ongoing investigations. But her silence speaks volumes. Federal investigations into local police departments follow predictable patterns. Wiretaps, financial audits, informant networks, evidence gathering that continues for months before arrests begin. We found drugs in your vehicle. No, you didn't. Alicia's certainty challenges everything they've constructed. Planted evidence requires suspect cooperation through intimidation or ignorance. Federal prosecutors possess neither quality. Are you calling my officers liars? I'm stating facts. Those drugs weren't in my car because I don't use drugs. Your officers planted evidence to justify an unlawful arrest. Direct accusations. No hedging. No diplomatic language. Federal prosecutor confidence backed by federal prosecutor knowledge. Wilson realizes their routine arrest just became a federal case study in police misconduct. Every procedure will face scrutiny. Every decision requires justification. Every officer involved faces potential prosecution. The hunter becomes the hunted. Coleman rejoins the group, his swagger diminished by developing awareness that tonight's arrest might destroy careers instead of advancing them. Problem, Captain? Run her prints again. Check federal databases. Already did. Clean record, too clean. Federal prosecutors maintain security clearances requiring extensive background investigations. Their records reflect careful vetting and professional accomplishments, not typical criminal profiles. Davis pulls Wilson aside. More whispered conferences, more urgent gestures toward computer screens displaying federal employment records. Some mistakes can't be undone quietly. Davis returns to her computer with growing unease. Federal databases require careful navigation. Some searches trigger automatic notifications to oversight agencies. Some inquiries leave digital footprints that invite unwanted attention. But honest police work demands truth, regardless of consequences. The first search confirms basic information. Dr. Alicia Morrison, federal employee, Justice Department, Civil Rights Division, security clearance, top secret. Top secret clearance for civil rights prosecutors indicates involvement in national security cases, domestic terrorism investigations, organized crime prosecutions that cross state boundaries. The computer screen changes everything. Davis scrolls deeper into federal employment records. Harvard Law School graduate. Federal clerkship with Chief Judge Patricia Williams. Assistant U.S. Attorney for Southern District. Current assignment, Public Corruption Task Force. Public Corruption Task Force. The words carry weight that crushes careers and destroys departments. Federal prosecutors who specialize in investigating police misconduct. The nightmare scenario every corrupt cop fears most. Wilson approaches Davis's desk. What did you find? We arrested a federal prosecutor. So? Not just any federal prosecutor. She specializes in police corruption cases. The precinct's ambient noise continues unchanged. Officers type reports, coffee brews in break rooms. Night shift routines proceed normally while disaster builds in real time. Wilson studies the computer screen. Federal employment records don't lie. Security clearances require congressional approval. Task force assignments indicate congressional confidence in prosecutorial abilities. This could be a problem. Davis clicks through additional records. Recent cases, successful prosecutions, police departments dismantled by federal investigations led by Dr. Alicia Morrison. Phoenix Police Department, 18 officers indicted, 7 convictions. Department restructured under federal oversight. Baltimore County. Sheriff. Corruption investigation resulted in complete leadership replacement. Federal monitoring continues. Detroit Metro Task Force. Disbanded after Morrison's investigation revealed systematic evidence tampering. Each case follows identical patterns: long-term surveillance, financial audits, wiretap evidence, methodical destruction of corrupt police networks. "Captain," Davis calls softly, "you need to see this." Wilson reads over Davis's shoulder. Case summaries paint pictures of federal power applied against local corruption. Prosecutorial resources that dwarf municipal legal departments. Investigative capabilities that penetrate decades-old conspiracies. How many cases has she won? Davis scrolls through conviction records. 47 successful prosecutions in 5 years. No defeats. Perfect record against police corruption. Perfect record. Federal prosecutors don't achieve perfect records through luck. They achieve them through methodical preparation, overwhelming evidence, and prosecutorial skill that destroys defense strategies. The same skills now focused on their department. Check current cases, Wilson orders. Davis navigates to active investigation files. Federal security protocols limit access to basic case numbers and jurisdictions, but jurisdictional information provides crucial intelligence. Current investigation, Eastern District, local police departments. Ongoing for 8 months. Eastern District includes their precinct. Davis's face goes pale. Wilson realizes the implications immediately. 8 months of investigation means 8 months of surveillance. 8 months of evidence gathering. 8 months of building cases that will destroy careers and send officers to federal prison. We need to call the chief. At midnight? Now. But calling police chiefs about federal investigations creates paper trails. Phone records become evidence in corruption trials. Communications between command staff indicate consciousness of guilt. Every action now carries federal consequences. Meanwhile, other officers continue normal operations. Coleman completes arrest paperwork. Mitchell inventories evidence. Both men unaware that their routine procedures might constitute federal crimes. Obstruction of justice, deprivation of rights under color of law, conspiracy to violate civil rights, federal charges that carry 20-year sentences. Davis studies Morrison's photograph on the federal website. Professional headshot. Confident expression. Caption reads, Dr. Alicia Morrison leads federal efforts to combat police corruption and protect civil rights. The same woman sits in their holding cell. We made a mistake, Davis admits. Wilson nods grimly. Mistakes against federal prosecutors become federal cases. Federal cases destroy local careers. Local careers built on corruption don't survive federal scrutiny. What do? Damage control. But damage control against federal prosecutors requires acknowledging wrongdoing. Acknowledging wrongdoing creates evidence for future prosecutions. Evidence leads to convictions. Convictions lead to federal prison. The precinct continues its normal rhythm while disaster builds quietly. Reports typed, coffee consumed, jokes shared about teaching lessons to suspects who forget their place. None of them realize their victim prosecutes police officers for a living. None of them know about ongoing federal investigations. None of them understand that tonight's arrest might be the final evidence needed for federal indictments. Davis looks toward the holding cells where Dr. Morrison sits with unnatural calm. Federal prosecutors don't panic during arrests. They document everything. They remember details. They build cases from personal experience with police misconduct. She's been gathering evidence since the traffic stop. Wilson follows Davis's gaze. Professional composure during illegal detention indicates prosecutorial training. Mental note-taking during rights violations suggests courtroom preparation. Calm acceptance of abuse implies confidence in eventual justice. Every minute she's in that cell builds her case against us. The federal prosecutor builds cases for a living. Tonight, she's building the most important case of her career. The case that will define their futures. The case that will determine who goes to prison and who goes free. Davis reaches for the phone. Time to make calls that might save careers or confirm their destruction. But some calls can't be made without admitting guilt. And admitting guilt to federal prosecutors destroys any hope of mercy. 3 floors above the precinct, automated systems trigger silent alarms. Federal monitoring protocols activate when DOJ employees face extended detention. Security clearance holders missing scheduled check-ins prompt immediate response procedures. Dr. Morrison's absence registers in databases designed to protect federal prosecutors from retaliation. The federal building's Emergency Operations Center illuminates with amber warnings. Computer screens display location data, communication logs, and threat assessment protocols. Night shift supervisors review automated alerts with growing concern. Federal agents are already moving. Miles away, Attorney General Robert Morrison works late in his home office. Federal corruption cases require personal attention from the state's highest law enforcement official. His daughter's investigation represents months of careful preparation against systemic police misconduct. His secure phone remains silent. No calls from Alicia about tonight's strategy session. No updates about evidence gathering. No routine check-ins that punctuate their professional collaboration. The silence carries weight. Back at the precinct, Davis attempts discreet conversations with senior officers. Careful words about potential problems. Subtle warnings about federal complications. Professional courtesy extended to colleagues who might face career-ending consequences. Something wrong with tonight's arrest, she mentions to Sergeant Rodriguez. What kind of wrong? Federal wrong. Rodriguez understands immediately. Federal problems don't resolve through local connections. Federal investigations don't stop for political considerations. Federal prosecutors don't forgive police misconduct for collegial reasons. Wilson paces her office while reviewing departmental policies on federal employee detention. Regulations require immediate notification to Justice Department liaisons. Procedures demand supervisory approval for extended holding. Protocol mandates legal counsel access within specified timeframes. None followed tonight. Radio chatter increases across the city. Federal vehicles moving toward downtown. Unmarked sedans converging on government buildings. Coordinated response to missing prosecutor triggering security protocols. Davis monitors federal communications frequencies. Years of detective work taught her to recognize investigation patterns. Tonight's radio traffic suggests major operation preparation. Her father doesn't know yet. The Attorney General's secure line finally rings. Federal security protocols require escalation when DOJ employees face potential danger. Missing prosecutor alerts reach cabinet-level officials within hours of triggering. Sir, we have a situation. Robert Morrison listens to briefing details with growing alarm. His daughter. Missing. Last known location near downtown precinct. Automated security alerts suggesting detention or worse. Deploy response teams immediately. Federal resources mobilize with efficiency that terrifies local law enforcement. FBI field offices. U.S. Marshals. Justice Department Internal Affairs. Coordinated response designed to protect federal prosecutors from local retaliation. 6 hours until everything changes. Wilson realizes their window for quiet resolution closes rapidly. Federal response protocols operate on compressed timelines. Missing prosecutor investigations don't allow extended delays for local face-saving measures. We need to resolve this now, she tells Davis. How? Quietly, before federal attention arrives. But federal attention already arrived. Monitoring systems, automated alerts, security protocols designed to protect prosecutors from exactly this situation. Coleman and Mitchell continue normal procedures, unaware that federal agents coordinate response to their actions. Evidence processing, report filing, routine police work that might constitute federal crimes. The holding area maintains its typical late-night atmosphere: fluorescent lighting, concrete walls, steel bars separating accused from accusers who sometimes deserve switching places. Dr. Morrison sits with professional patience. 20 years of legal practice taught her to recognize investigation timelines. Federal response protocols activate predictably when prosecutors face extended detention. Help approaches whether local authorities cooperate or not. Davis returns to her computer for deeper federal database searches. Active investigation files require higher security clearances, but basic operational information remains accessible to local law enforcement liaisons. Investigation timeline: 8 months. Target: Eastern District Police Departments. Lead prosecutor: Dr. Alicia Morrison. Evidence gathering phase: complete. Grand jury proceedings: scheduled. Indictment preparation: final stages. The federal investigation nears completion. Tonight's arrest might provide final evidence needed for comprehensive prosecutions. Wilson reads over Davis's shoulder with growing dread. Federal investigations don't begin with arrests. They end with arrests. 8 months of evidence gathering suggests preparation for major prosecutions. They've been watching us. For 8 months. Everything we've done. Davis nods grimly. Federal surveillance capabilities extend far beyond local comprehension. Wiretaps, financial audits, informant networks, methodical evidence gathering that builds unshakable cases. Tonight's misconduct adds final chapter to existing investigation. The precinct phone rings with insistent urgency. Federal calls carry different authority than local communications. Official business that demands immediate attention regardless of convenient timing. Wilson answers with reluctant recognition of inevitable consequences. This is Captain Wilson. This is Deputy Attorney General Sarah Chen. We need to discuss your current detention of federal prosecutor Dr. Alicia Morrison. The words carry weight that crushes local authority. Deputy Attorney General outranks everyone in the building. Federal prosecutor detention creates automatic federal response. Local discretion disappears when federal interests require protection. Ma'am, we can explain. Explanation occurs during formal proceedings. Release Dr. Morrison immediately. Federal authority brooks no negotiation. Local explanations become evidence in federal prosecutions. Cooperation might influence sentencing, but outcomes remain predetermined. But it's already too late to stop. The federal machinery moves with unstoppable momentum. Investigation completion. Indictment preparation. Prosecutorial resources focused on systematic corruption. Tonight's arrest accelerates existing timelines rather than creating new problems. Wilson's hands shake as she ends the call with the Deputy Attorney General. 25 years of police work never prepared her for conversations with cabinet-level officials demanding immediate prisoner release. We need to talk to her, Wilson tells Davis, privately. The interview room smells of stale coffee and broken dreams, gray walls, metal table, recording equipment that witnesses confessions and denials in equal measure. Tonight, it hosts damage control attempts that might already be too late. Davis escorts Dr. Morrison from the holding cell. Professional courtesy replaces earlier hostility. Federal authority commands respect, even from those who resist its implications. Dr. Morrison, I'm Captain Wilson. I apologize for tonight's misunderstanding. Alicia takes the offered seat with measured composure. 20 years of hostile depositions taught her to recognize desperate attempts at face-saving. Local authority crumbling before federal oversight. Misunderstanding suggests accidental error. Tonight involved deliberate violations of federal law. Direct language. No diplomatic hedging. Federal prosecutor precision that cuts through police rhetoric. Wilson exchanges glances with Davis. Damage control requires acknowledgement without admission. Cooperation without confession. Professional courtesy that might influence federal prosecutions. We're prepared to release you immediately. All charges dropped. Complete expungement of tonight's arrest record. That's not how federal civil rights violations work. The words hit like physical blows. Federal civil rights violations carry mandatory prosecution requirements. Local authorities cannot negotiate away federal crimes through administrative actions. Davis leans forward. Ma'am, we discovered your identity through routine background checks. Had we known, you would have violated someone else's rights instead? Sharp question. Professional trap. Federal prosecutors excel at exposing flawed reasoning through precise inquiries. Wilson tries different approach. This was a good faith mistake. Traffic stop based on reasonable suspicion. Standard police procedure. Reasonable suspicion of what crime? Silence stretches across the small room. Traffic stops require articulated suspicion of specific violations. Tonight's stop based solely on racial profiling and neighborhood enforcement. Driving in an area known for drug activity. Riverside District has lower crime rates than police precincts. Your own statistics contradict that justification. Federal prosecutors research everything. Crime statistics, departmental policies, legal precedents that destroy weak defenses, professional preparation that anticipates every excuse. Davis tries to prevent the inevitable. Doctor, we understand you're upset. Anyone would be, but this doesn't need to become a federal case. It already is a federal case, has been for 8 months. The admission lands with devastating impact. 8 months of federal investigation, systematic evidence gathering, prosecutorial preparation that reaches final stages. Tonight's arrest didn't create federal problems. It completed federal evidence gathering. Wilson's face drains color. You've been investigating us. Public Corruption Task Force investigates systematic police misconduct. Your department qualified months ago. Professional explanation delivered with clinical precision. No emotion, no personal satisfaction. Federal prosecutor efficiency applied to corruption cases. What do you have? Wiretap evidence of conspiracy to violate civil rights. Financial records showing systematic theft through asset forfeiture abuse. Video documentation of excessive force incidents covered up by supervisory personnel. Each revelation builds upon the last. Federal investigations gather evidence across multiple categories. Wiretaps capture conversations. Financial audits reveal corruption. Video evidence documents abuse. Comprehensive prosecutions require comprehensive evidence gathering. Davis realizes the scope of approaching disaster. How many officers? 43 individuals face federal charges. 12 supervisory personnel. Command staff involvement reaches captain level. Wilson understands she's included in federal charges. Captain level involvement means her decisions, her policies, her cover-up attempts all documented by federal surveillance. Tonight's arrest provides final evidence needed for obstruction of justice charges. The trap closes with federal precision. Months of investigation building toward prosecutorial certainty. Tonight's misconduct adding final elements to already comprehensive cases. But Davis tries to prevent the inevitable. Is there any cooperation that might? Federal prosecutions proceed according to evidence, not negotiations. Clinical response. Professional prosecution standards that don't bend for local convenience. Federal authority applied without favor or compromise. Wilson stands abruptly. Pacing helps process information that destroys careers and futures. Federal prosecutions end police careers. Prison sentences follow conviction. Life changes occur quickly when federal authority focuses on local corruption. When indictments are sealed, arrests coordinated with federal marshals, Timeline classified, but timing becomes apparent through federal response protocols. Missing prosecutor alerts trigger rapid deployment. Investigation completion suggests imminent action. Soon. Davis escort Dr. Morrison back toward the holding area, but federal authority now protects her from further detention. Deputy Attorney General orders supersede local decisions. "We're releasing you immediately," Wilson announces. Appropriate decision. Professional acknowledgement without gratitude. Federal prosecutors don't appreciate correction of illegal detention. They expect constitutional compliance as baseline requirement. The cell door opens with metallic finality. Freedom returns, but consequences remain. Federal investigations continue regardless of local cooperation. Prosecutorial decisions reflect evidence, not courtesy. Dr. Morrison collects her scattered belongings. Legal briefs. Broken phone. Personal items treated as criminal evidence by officers who will soon face criminal charges themselves. "Your property," Davis offers apologetically. "Evidence in federal prosecution." Everything becomes evidence when federal prosecutors face retaliation. Tonight's misconduct documented through personal experience, prosecutorial testimony backed by physical proof. Wilson watches Dr. Morrison prepare to leave. Federal prosecutor departing precinct after illegal detention. Professional composure maintained throughout constitutional violations. "Doctor, this doesn't need to destroy careers. Careers built on corruption destroy themselves." Final words delivered with prosecutorial certainty. Federal cases proceed according to evidence and law, not local political considerations. Some mistakes can't be undone quietly. The precinct's front desk buzzes with nervous energy. Officers process Dr. Morrison's release with careful attention to proper procedures, every form signed correctly. Every protocol followed precisely. Professional courtesy extended too late to matter. Property return occurs under watchful supervision. Personal items inventoried with unusual care. Evidence bags handled like potential federal exhibits. Everything documented for future scrutiny. "Your belongings, ma'am," the desk sergeant offers respectfully. Alicia examines her recovered property. Legal briefs crumpled but readable. Phone screen cracked but functional. Personal items treated roughly during arrest, now handled with exaggerated delicacy. "Thank you." Professional acknowledgement without warmth. Federal prosecutors don't express gratitude for constitutional compliance. They expect it as minimum standard. Wilson approaches with measured steps. Damage control requires careful navigation between acknowledgement and admission. Professional courtesy that might influence future prosecutions without constituting confession. "Dr. Morrison, again, our sincere apologies for tonight's misunderstanding." Understood. Single-word responses. Prosecutorial efficiency that doesn't waste time on meaningless courtesies. Federal authority focused on documentation rather than reconciliation. Davis escorts her toward the exit. Professional courtesy from the only officer who recognized problems early. Conscience within corrupt system trying to minimize collective damage. "Ma'am, for what it's worth, some of us try to do this job right." Alicia pauses. Human recognition within institutional failure. Individual conscience struggling against systematic corruption. "I know." Brief acknowledgement that some officers maintain integrity within compromised departments. Federal prosecutions distinguish between individual misconduct and systematic corruption. The precinct's front doors open to midnight air. Freedom returns after hours of illegal detention. Constitutional rights restored through federal intervention rather than local recognition. But federal wheels continue turning regardless of local corrections. Wilson watches through glass doors as Dr. Morrison walks toward her recovered vehicle. Federal prosecutor departing after constitutional violations. Professional composure maintained throughout illegal detention. "Think we fixed it?" Coleman asks hopefully. "No." Wilson's honesty cuts through false optimism. Federal investigations don't stop because local authorities correct mistakes. 8 months of evidence gathering doesn't disappear through polite apologies. Dr. Morrison starts her car with deliberate calm. Engine responds normally despite earlier forced stop. Vehicle systems function properly despite search conducted without warrant or cause. She adjusts rear-view mirrors with prosecutorial precision. Everything documented. Everything remembered. Everything prepared for future testimony about tonight's constitutional violations. The BMW pulls away from the precinct with measured speed. No dramatic departure. No angry gestures. Professional prosecutor returning to federal duties with additional evidence for ongoing investigation. Wilson returns to her office with heavy steps. Federal problems require federal solutions. Local damage control attempts prove inadequate against systematic prosecution preparation. Davis follows with growing unease. What happens now? We wait. For what? Federal indictments. The words carry weight that settles over the precinct like heavy fog. Federal indictments end careers. Prison sentences follow convictions. Life changes occur rapidly when prosecutorial attention focuses on police corruption. Coleman continues normal procedures, unaware that routine police work might constitute additional federal crimes. Evidence processing under federal surveillance. Report filing that creates prosecutorial evidence. Normal operations that build federal cases. Mitchell completes paperwork with careful attention to details that might matter during cross-examination. Arrest reports require specific language to survive judicial review. Legal fiction constructed through careful word choice. But federal prosecutors specialize in deconstructing police reports. Professional expertise applied to exposing false narratives. Courtroom skills that destroy defensive strategies. The precinct settles into late-night routine, while federal machinery operates with unstoppable momentum. Coffee brews. Reports typed. Conversations shared about lessons taught to suspects who forget social boundaries. None realizing their victim prosecutes police officers for federal crimes. Dr. Morrison drives through empty streets with prosecutorial focus. Tonight's experience adds personal testimony to months of systematic evidence gathering. Professional prosecution, backed by first-hand constitutional violations. Her phone displays missed calls from federal security. Automated alerts triggered by extended detention. Response protocols designed to protect prosecutors from local retaliation. She dials the federal emergency number. This is Dr. Morrison, confirming safe release from local detention. Understood. Debrief scheduled for 0600 hours. Professional efficiency. Federal response coordinated with prosecutorial preparation. Tonight's evidence integrated into existing investigation timeline. The federal building appears ahead through darkness. Professional sanctuary where constitutional violations become prosecutorial evidence. Federal authority that protects prosecutors from local hostility. Freedom comes with a price they'll pay. Wilson stares through precinct windows at empty streets. Federal prosecutor departed safely. Constitutional crisis resolved through external intervention rather than internal recognition. But federal investigations continue regardless of local cooperation. Davis approaches with final questions about managing approaching disaster. Captain, what do we tell the others? Nothing. They deserve to know. Know what? That we arrested a federal prosecutor investigating police corruption? That 43 officers face federal charges? That careers end when indictments arrive? Truth carries weight that destroys morale before federal action arrives. Professional knowledge that creates panic rather than preparation. Some information requires careful timing. The precinct continues normal operations while federal evidence gathering reaches completion. Tonight's constitutional violations provide final prosecutorial elements needed for comprehensive cases. Tomorrow will bring the real reckoning. Dawn breaks with federal precision. Black SUVs arrive in coordinated formation outside the precinct. FBI field agents, U.S. Marshals, Justice Department investigators, federal authority deployed with overwhelming force. The morning shift arrives to find their workplace transformed into a crime scene. Yellow tape. Evidence teams. Federal agents executing search warrants with methodical efficiency. Wilson watches through her office window as federal marshals approach the building. 25 years of police authority evaporates when federal badges supersede local jurisdiction. Federal agents, we have warrants. The words carry constitutional weight that crushes local resistance. Federal search warrants signed by federal judges. Federal authority backed by federal prosecutorial power. Davis recognizes the lead agent from federal law enforcement conferences. Supervisory Special Agent Jennifer Roberts, FBI Public Corruption Unit. Career built on destroying corrupt police departments. Agent Roberts. Detective Davis, we need all personnel in the main briefing room, now. Professional courtesy between law enforcement agencies. Federal respect for honest local officers within compromised departments. Individual integrity recognized within institutional corruption. The briefing room fills with confused officers. Night shift personnel detained for questioning. Day shift arriving to federal occupation. Professional lives intersecting with prosecutorial justice. Agent Roberts addresses the assembly with prosecutorial authority. Federal investigation conclusions. Evidence summary. Charges pending against departmental personnel. 8 months ago, the Justice Department initiated Operation Clean Badge. Systematic investigation into corruption, civil rights violations, and criminal conspiracy within this police department. Silence settles over assembled officers. Federal investigations targeting their workplace. Professional careers threatened by prosecutorial evidence. But the evidence doesn't stop there. Dr. Morrison enters through federal escort. Professional composure maintained despite last night's constitutional violations. Federal prosecutor returning to complete prosecutorial duties. Recognition ripples through the room. The woman they arrested. The suspect they detained, the victim of their constitutional violations. Dr. Alicia Morrison, lead federal prosecutor, Civil Rights Division, Public Corruption Task Force. Professional introduction that transforms last night's victim into today's prosecutor. Federal authority represented by the woman they illegally detained. Wilson realizes the complete scope of their disaster. Federal prosecutor investigating police corruption. Arrested by corrupt police. Personal experience added to systematic evidence gathering. Perfect prosecutorial irony. Agent Roberts continues methodical evidence presentation. Federal investigations build cases through comprehensive documentation. Multiple evidence categories that destroy defensive strategies. Evidence Category 1, Video Documentation. Wall screens illuminate with dashboard camera footage. Last night's traffic stop displayed in federal courtroom quality. Constitutional violations documented through department equipment. The footage shows no traffic violations, no reasonable suspicion, no probable cause. Racial profiling and neighborhood enforcement exposed through official recordings. Coleman watches himself violate federal law. Miranda rights ignored. Constitutional protections dismissed. Professional conduct that constitutes federal crimes. Evidence Category 2, Audio Surveillance. Speakers fill with wiretap recordings. 8 months of intercepted conversations. Conspiracy discussions captured through federal surveillance capabilities. Wilson's voice emerges from speakers. Keep the drug arrests up in Riverside. Property values depend on maintaining standards. Her own words condemning departmental policy. Systematic civil rights violations coordinated through command structure. Leadership involvement in constitutional crimes. Each document seals another fate. Mitchell hears himself discussing evidence planting. Plant enough to make it stick. Federal prosecutors won't waste time on small-time possession cases. Federal prosecutors specialize in cases exactly like evidence tampering. Professional expertise applied to systematic police misconduct. Prosecutorial resources focused on constitutional violations. Evidence Category 3, Financial Documentation. Federal auditors discovered systematic theft through asset forfeiture abuse. Drug money seized from arrests redirected to personal accounts. Corruption extending beyond constitutional violations into criminal enterprise. Bank records display on federal screens. Personal deposits correlating with evidence seizures. Mathematical proof of systematic theft coordinated through departmental procedures. Davis watches colleagues discover their financial crimes documented through federal investigation. Years of theft exposed through professional auditing. Criminal conspiracy proven through banking evidence. Evidence Category 4, tonight's constitutional violations. Dr. Morrison approaches the federal presentation equipment. Personal testimony backed by prosecutorial authority. Victim impact statement delivered by federal prosecutor. Last night I experienced systematic constitutional violations by officers of this department. Racial profiling, unlawful detention, evidence tampering, rights violations. Personal experience that confirms 8 months of systematic evidence gathering. Professional testimony that transforms personal experience into prosecutorial evidence. Federal prosecutor describing constitutional violations she personally endured. The room realizes their complete defeat. Federal prosecutor investigating police corruption. Personally victimized by corrupt police. Professional and personal authority focused on their destruction. Agent Roberts reveals federal indictments with prosecutorial finality. Sealed documents prepared over months of investigation. Criminal charges that end careers and begin prison sentences. Sergeant Brad Coleman. Conspiracy to violate civil rights. Deprivation of rights under color of law. Evidence tampering. Perjury. Coleman's 20-year career ends with federal charges. Pension forfeited. Professional reputation destroyed. Federal prison sentence inevitable. Officer Ryan Mitchell. Civil rights violations. Evidence tampering. Conspiracy to commit federal crimes. Mitchell's police career terminated through federal prosecution. Young officer destroyed by systematic corruption participation. Criminal conviction guaranteed through overwhelming evidence. Captain Janet Wilson. Conspiracy to violate civil rights, racketeering, money laundering. Leadership of criminal enterprise. Wilson's command authority crumbles under federal charges. Leadership position transformed into criminal liability. RICO prosecution that carries 20-year sentences. Federal marshals approach with arrest warrants. Professional law enforcement officers becoming federal prisoners. Handcuffs applied to hands that violated constitutional rights. You have the right to remain silent. Miranda rights delivered with federal authority. Constitutional protections extended to those who violated constitutional rights. Professional irony that completes prosecutorial circle. Dr. Morrison watches former captors become federal prisoners. Justice delivered through systematic prosecution rather than personal revenge. Professional satisfaction derived from constitutional vindication. The precinct transforms from workplace to federal crime scene. Evidence gathering continues under prosecutorial supervision. Professional investigation that builds unshakable cases. Davis approaches Dr. Morrison with professional respect. Honest officer recognizing prosecutorial authority. Individual integrity within institutional corruption. Ma'am, thank you for not including everyone. Federal prosecution targets systematic corruption, not individual conscience. Professional distinction between criminal conspiracy and moral resistance. Federal justice that recognizes individual integrity within compromised institutions. Justice has been building this case for months. Wilson, Coleman, and Mitchell disappear into federal custody. Police officers becoming federal prisoners. Professional authority transformed into criminal liability through systematic prosecution. The federal machinery operates with unstoppable efficiency. Evidence gathered. Charges filed. Justice delivered through constitutional processes rather than extrajudicial punishment. Dr. Morrison returns to federal duties with additional evidence for ongoing prosecutions. Professional prosecutor advancing systematic reform through systematic prosecution. Federal authority applied with constitutional precision. 3 months later, the federal courthouse buzzes with media attention. Operation Clean Badge reaches its conclusion through systematic justice rather than public spectacle. Constitutional processes delivering accountability that reforms entire systems. Dr. Morrison stands at the prosecution table with quiet authority. Harvard law training applied to systematic police corruption. 20 years of federal prosecution experience focused on constitutional vindication. The defendants sit in federal custody uniforms. Police officers transformed into federal prisoners. Professional authority replaced by criminal liability through prosecutorial precision. Judge Patricia Williams presides with constitutional gravity. Federal jurisdiction applied to systematic civil rights violations. Judicial authority that transcends local political considerations. The court will hear sentencing arguments. Dr. Morrison approaches the federal podium with prosecutorial composure. Personal victimization transformed into professional testimony. Constitutional violations addressed through systematic legal processes. Your Honor, these defendants participated in systematic constitutional violations spanning multiple years. Racial profiling, evidence tampering, rights deprivations, criminal conspiracy that corrupted an entire police department. Professional language that transforms personal experience into legal argument. Federal prosecution standards applied to systematic police misconduct. Defense attorneys attempt mitigation through career service arguments. Years of police work. Community contributions. Professional achievements that preceded criminal conspiracy participation. But federal judges focus on constitutional violations rather than career accomplishments. Systematic civil rights violations that require systematic legal responses. Judge Williams delivers sentences with constitutional authority. Federal guidelines applied to systematic police corruption. Prison terms that reflect constitutional violation severity. Sergeant Coleman, 8 years federal imprisonment. Officer Mitchell, 5 years federal imprisonment. Captain Wilson, 12 years federal imprisonment under RICO statutes. Justice delivered through constitutional processes. Federal prison sentences that end police careers and begin personal accountability. Systematic prosecution producing systematic consequences. The courtroom empties with quiet satisfaction. Constitutional violations addressed through legal processes rather than extrajudicial punishment. Federal authority applied with prosecutorial precision. Dr. Morrison walks federal courthouse steps with professional satisfaction. Personal vindication achieved through systematic prosecution. Constitutional rights protected through institutional reform rather than individual revenge. Detective Davis approaches with renewed purpose. Honest police officer promoted to interim captain. Individual integrity rewarded within reformed institutional structure. Dr. Morrison, the new policies are working. Community trust improving. Officer training emphasizing constitutional compliance. Systematic reform through prosecutorial intervention. Police departments restructured under federal oversight. Constitutional compliance enforced through institutional change rather than individual punishment. Change requires constant vigilance, Dr. Morrison responds. Federal oversight continues until constitutional compliance becomes institutional culture. Professional assessment that acknowledges ongoing reform requirements. Systematic change through systematic oversight. Federal authority applied to ensure constitutional compliance. The federal building represents constitutional authority that transcends local political considerations. Justice Department resources focused on systematic reform rather than punitive satisfaction. Professional prosecution, advancing constitutional principles. Attorney General Robert Morrison joins his daughter on courthouse steps. Professional pride in prosecutorial excellence. Personal satisfaction in constitutional vindication achieved through systematic legal processes. Excellent work, counselor. Constitutional rights protect everyone equally, regardless of position or authority. Professional principle that guided systematic prosecution. Federal authority applied without favor or prejudice. Constitutional compliance demanded from all government officials. Media questions focus on systematic reform rather than individual punishment. Institutional change through prosecutorial intervention. Federal oversight ensuring constitutional compliance across law enforcement agencies. Dr. Morrison, what message does this prosecution send? Constitutional rights remain inviolate regardless of official position. Federal prosecution will address systematic violations through systematic legal processes. Justice serves constitutional principles rather than political considerations. Professional response that emphasizes constitutional compliance over personal vindication. Federal prosecution focused on systematic reform rather than individual revenge. The reformed police department operates under federal oversight with renewed constitutional focus. Training programs emphasizing rights protection. Supervisory procedures ensuring constitutional compliance. Systematic change through prosecutorial intervention. Community meetings demonstrate restored trust through institutional accountability. Federal prosecution producing local reform. Constitutional vindication creating systematic change that protects everyone equally. Dr. Morrison returns to federal duties with enhanced prosecutorial authority. Personal experience strengthening professional commitment to constitutional protection. Systematic prosecution advancing systematic reform across multiple jurisdictions. The Public Corruption Task Force expands operations to additional departments requiring federal intervention. Constitutional violations addressed through systematic prosecution rather than political accommodation. Federal authority protecting constitutional rights through institutional accountability. Years of systematic reform follow systematic prosecution. Police departments restructured under constitutional compliance requirements. Federal oversight ensuring systematic change rather than temporary improvement. Constitutional principles vindicated through systematic legal processes. Federal prosecution creating institutional accountability. Professional justice advancing constitutional protection for all citizens regardless of position or authority. Community voices rise in support of constitutional compliance over political convenience. Systematic reform supported through civic engagement. Democratic processes reinforcing constitutional principles through institutional accountability. Dr. Morrison's office displays constitutional law texts alongside prosecutorial awards. Professional achievement measured through systematic reform rather than individual recognition. Federal prosecution advancing constitutional principles across American law enforcement. The Attorney General's office coordinates nationwide police reform through systematic prosecutorial intervention. Constitutional violations addressed through institutional change rather than individual punishment. Federal authority ensuring systematic compliance with constitutional principles. Justice flows through constitutional channels designed by democratic processes. Systematic prosecution, creating systematic accountability. Federal authority protecting constitutional rights through institutional reform rather than political accommodation. Truth surfaces through prosecutorial evidence rather than political revelation. Systematic investigation producing systematic justice. Constitutional vindication achieved through professional legal processes designed to protect democratic institutions. The federal system operates with constitutional precision designed to protect individual rights through institutional accountability. Democratic processes ensuring systematic justice rather than arbitrary punishment. Professional prosecution advancing constitutional principles that protect everyone equally. Years later, reformed police departments serve as models for constitutional compliance nationwide. Systematic prosecution producing systematic reform. Federal authority creating institutional change that protects constitutional rights through professional law enforcement rather than political control. Dr. Morrison continues federal prosecution with enhanced authority derived from personal constitutional vindication. Professional commitment strengthened through personal experience. Systematic reform advancing constitutional protection across American democratic institutions. Constitutional rights remain protected through systematic legal processes designed by democratic wisdom. Federal prosecution ensuring institutional accountability. Professional justice, advancing constitutional principles that protect individual dignity within systematic democratic governance. The courthouse stands as monument to constitutional justice applied through systematic legal processes. Democratic institutions protecting individual rights through professional prosecution rather than political accommodation. Federal authority ensuring constitutional compliance across all levels of American governance. Power serves justice through constitutional processes designed to protect democratic institutions. Systematic prosecution creating systematic accountability. Federal authority advancing constitutional principles that ensure equal protection under systematic legal governance designed by democratic wisdom, applied through professional institutional processes.
You've seen the story. Now what will you do with it? At Beat Stories, we believe reflection is good, but action is better. Subscribe, share, speak, because awareness is only the first step.